Welcome back. Let's see how to listen for data from Firebase. Now you probably noticed that we didn't add the quote locally quite yet, and that's because when we created it, we actually didn't set the key. Now we could have used push to do that, but another simple way to do it is just basically push it on and then listen. Once it gets it there, it actually we can then add it, right? But without the key, if we just didn't deal with the key at all, we'd have troubles because like if you want to delete things, you need to delete them by key and so on. So we'd have some issues that would come back to haunt us later on. Right? So listening for the addition from Firebase and then adding it then is a very good idea. It also lets us make changes if someone else makes changes to our movie quote, right? Another version of the app. Right? All right, and it happens pretty much instantly, so don't worry about this. You really don't have to worry about latency here. Okay. So we want to be notified. Now we have a reference. Remember, our reference was on quotes. Okay, so all the changes that are going to be made are going to be at the level of the children of this node, right? So down here, each movie quote object is essentially a child, and it has a key and a value. And remember that guy right there, our snapshot is this. So if we call snapshot.getKey, it gives us this, and then .getValue is this object right here. Okay, and again, they're children of quotes. Now you remember when we did just the value event listener for favorite things, we had like a set value method, and that's all we did, right? We sort of set things. But here, there's going to be a whole bunch of them, and we kind of want to be notified separately depending on what happens, right? If one just gets deleted, we don't want to worry about changing this whole thing. We just want, we want to know which one was deleted and so on. Okay, and that's where this child event listener is going to come into play. All right, so let's go ahead and let's make a quotes child event listener, right? And we're going to do this as a nested class here. It's child event listeners, as you can see, have 5 different methods there. So they get a little bit bigger. So I like the pattern of using an inner class for those. So what I'm going to do is underneath my constructor here, I'm going to make a class. So we'll call it quotes child event listener, and it implements Firebase's child event listener. All right, and again, if you want some help with that sort of auto completing, sometimes it takes a little bit here. Implement the methods, all right, like so, and they're just empty for now. But I will take my quotes ref, and I will add a child event listener and a new instance of this quotes child event listener. All right, and that just sort of a little bit cleaner way of doing it. Okay. All right, very good. So what do we want to do? So again, if you notice this, there were snapshots in all of these callbacks, right? So the snapshots give you the relevant information, right? So again, we said that you can get the key or you can get the value. Well, let's see. The first one is if a child was added, what do you want to do? Okay. So let's talk about this here. All right. So if one was added, we need to turn this into a movie quote itself. All right. So let's see. If I take not that one, if I take my data snapshot and I get value, right? You'll notice that I can just get it and it will return me an object. But I want a movie quote, and casting it isn't the right thing to do. It's more complex than just the string or the long that I had before. So get value also has a way so that if I pass in a more complex class here, so for instance, not there, if I pass in a movie quote dot class, that what it's actually going to return is going to be a movie quote, right? So movie quote equals this guy. All right, like so. Now I'm gonna have to add the key back myself. Remember, because this is just the value that it's given me back. So this is the quote, and I have to add this guy in separately. That's in a different part of the snapshot. So I'm gonna do quote dot set key, and I will do that from the data snapshot get key, like so. Because I want to store the key so I can search for things, to delete them and everything later on. So I set it, and then I'm going to do what I said before. which was, let's see, so what did I do? I added it to my quotes object, and I added it, the newest ones I actually had go at the top of my list, so I added it to position 2, or position 0, like so, and then I did a notify that the data set was changed. I could do item inserted if I wanted, so something like that. Okay. Now, what we should find is that we get everything, right? So, once this guy loaded up here, that all the quotes, all right, came up. That's because this child event listener fires immediately when this line is called, right? It gives you sort of the current state, and there had been a whole bunch of stuff that was added, so it sort of calls this to give you the current state. Now, any changes for them, deletion and so on, are going to take place in the other methods, but we'll actually come back and take care of that in a couple minutes. But what we want to be able to see is that we get all our quotes, and in fact, I could even add new ones on the back end, and they should show up immediately. Right? Probably not a bad test here. So what I'm going to do is delete one of these guys just to make room, and then I will come under quotes, and I will add, and I'm just going to sort of make up a key here, and with
Can I have your attention, please? The library will close in 15 minutes. Thank you.
So I make my key, and then so underneath here, I'll put a movie with new movie, and I'll put a quote, new quote, and I'll see, and before I hit add, I kind of wanted this guy running over here, so I click add, and we can see that it's going to make that. And it's a little bit weird here. It looks like maybe, let's see, maybe I didn't do that quite exactly the way that I wanted to. All right, so one thing to mention is you might be worried about latency here. You know, if we basically are sending a quote, then we're waiting for it to listen for a change from the database to come back, and that's when we actually add things. You know, you might think you have to wait for a while. And it turns out that for speed, it's very optimistic and actually calls your listener even before it makes the round trip, right? So, that's cool. So we're actually listen to our own changes before we even wait to hear anything back from the database, which means that even if we're offline, we can actually see our changes immediately. And if I want to test this, I can actually go into airplane mode very quickly and sort of do this. Well, let's see what we get here. Whoops, let's come back. And so I'm back here. So what I want to do is I want to let's see. So take my guy here and slide down, go into airplane mode, and so now I'm very much offline. So I'm going to hit plus, and then I'm going to add offline movie. Okay, I'm going to click OK, and you can see that clearly showed up immediately right here. Okay, so that's great. Let's check our console, and if we notice, there is no offline anywhere here. Okay, all right, it's not there's no communication going on here, but it still listened to what it pushed. Right, now if I go back and let's take this out of offline mode. All right, so out of airplane mode, and I wait, and the time that I'm waiting for here actually isn't for Firebase, I think, so much as it is for this guy to reestablish network connection and everything. But there it comes, and boom, we've got our offline movie, right? So so very, very neat, right? That we have this capability, right? Now, of course, if someone else were editing that same exact thing, then the latest change is going to win, right? And you can do all sorts of weird things, like if you delete an item, offline, but then you edit it on the back end, then it's actually going to bring back the deleted items. So there's some weirdness that can happen there. But it's at least worth knowing about it. Now, this isn't true offline capability, because if I were to actually stop my app without going back online, it would actually kill those changes, right? So they're just sort of temporary. But there are ways to get true offline capabilities, and we'll see at the end of this unit, right? So that is it. We'll see you next time.